It's preparing it. So I want to welcome everyone. Hold on. I got to put that on. This happened last time. We have 7 people, 755 subscribers. I want to welcome everyone. Okay, just give us a few seconds. We are experiencing technical difficulties. Let me mute that. Okay. That's much better.
Mr. Stein.
Sir.
Superb performance in Shawshank as the warden.
Sir. I wasn't doing that. That's very funny.
Oh.
Lewis, thank you for the brevity. And I want to welcome everyone to the first episode.
Is the soul of wit.
I want to welcome everyone to the first episode of World According to Ben Stein.
But wait a second. You have your name here as me.
That's a good point. I will, Ben, why don't you take us and I will go change that.
Okay.
I don't think anyone is going to be confused.
Yeah.
Ben, I don't know about that. I don't know about that. I don't know about that. Okay. Well, God bless you. God bless you.
I don't think anybody's going to be confused. They do think we are related.
Okay, let's go.
So I want to welcome everyone on the Chronicles of Ben Stein. We are here today, of course, with Ben Stein, but Remzo Martinez, who is a parlor advocate, a parlor super champ worker. And why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, Remzo, because I know you host a podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't get much sleep in the times of COVID because I'm continually working. But hi, everyone. I'm Remzo W. Martinez. I'm the host of On the Run with Remzo Martinez over at the We Are Libertarians Network. I host another show called the Second Print Comics Podcast, discussing the comics and pop culture that made us who we are. And I'm the author of How to Succeed in Politics and Other Forms of Devil Worship. So,
hey now,
very good title.
That's a great title. And of course, Ben Boychik, who is one of the best editors, managing editors, ghostwriters, book writers in the United States for AM Greatness. Ben Boychik. And sitting up finally, Lewis Mad Dog Fine, and one of the smartest.
Are we supposed to introduce ourselves?
Not really.
No.
Okay.
And we are discussing here today the Chronicles of Ben Stein. But as I've known Ben for about 17 years, so before we even start, I want to introduce people to the Ben Stein that I know. I met Ben Stein about 17 years ago when I first moved out to Los Angeles. I didn't have a purpose. I was scared to death. Ben, can I say where we met?
I don't even remember where we met.
At the upstairs meeting.
Oh, yeah. Okay. God bless you. God bless you. Yes.
We met at an upstairs.
Cedar Sinai. Yes, sir.
At an upstairs overflow 12-step meeting at Cedar Sinai.
Yes, I remember it well now.
I had shared something and Ben walked up to me and said, "That's very funny. That's very funny. That's very funny. Where do you go to meetings?"
It's very funny. I don't remember that, but I'm sure if you remember, you're right. You have a much better memory than I do. And
I said I'd go to the Key Club for meetings, and we started a journey of going places, and you sort of rescuing me from the abyss. You've rescued many animals, you've rescued many people in the world, but you've also rescued many humans.
Well, God bless you.
And for that, I am truly, eternally grateful, and I can't think of a better sort of chronicle of your life of all the people you've helped.
Well, God bless you, sir. I very kind of you. I couldn't even start to name them, but God bless you.
And that is the true Ben Stein. And we're here today. A few weeks back, I was on Parler, which you're on, which you have a burgeoning following. And I noticed they were talking about Ferris Bueller late at night. And somebody said, "Wow, it's coincidental that you were on." And I thought about the topic. In today's day and age, there's so much seriousness that there is no allowing for talk of fun and culture, and we're not allowed to talk about that. And what I want to ask the first question to you is, take us back to 1986, your car ride to the studio that day.
Well, I was on my way to Paramount. I don't remember whether it was stage 15 or stage 16 to record what I thought was going to be some voiceover taking the role for a class for a movie called Ferris Bueller's Day Off. And I had read the script, and it seemed funny, but not that funny, and sort of funny. And my job was simply to go through the list of students off camera. I was going to be off camera. I would say Adams, Adamley, Adamowski. I don't remember the other names. Buckley, Bueller. So I was just prepared to do that, and it so happened that the producer of the movie was a very close friend named Michael Chinich, Chinich, a super powerful casting guy in Hollywood, and a very, very, very close friend. And his boss, who was the top guy who had written and produced and directed this movie, along with many other very, very successful movies, was the inimitable John Hughes, a genuine genius. And John Hughes and I were among the few Republicans in Hollywood, and we sat and talked about politics for quite a long time before it was my time to shoot, so to speak. And we were in his trailer, very nice trailer, and Michael Chinich was there, and we were talking, and they said, "Okay, it's time for you to go record." So I went out and I stood amidst a group of high school student extras. That is, they were kids roughly high school age. They might have been a little older, a little younger, but I think they were mostly high school age. And I started doing the thing: Adams, Adamley, Adamowski, and no sooner had I started doing that than the students burst into a riotous laughter. And I didn't understand why. I thought, well, I didn't understand why. I really didn't understand why. I thought, but John Hughes came rushing over and said, I want, let's stop for a minute. I want you to do this on camera, and I want you to read much more of the role, and then I want you to say, has anyone seen Bueller, or whatever else I added. And then a young woman in the class is going to say, I saw him at 31 Flavors, and blah, blah, blah. My sister's cousin said he's blah, blah, blah. And so I said, okay, I'll do that. So I did that, and the student extras just laughed like madmen, like mad, crazy people, like I had given them some kind of laughing gas drug. And I could not understand why, and I still don't understand why. And then then John Hughes came over and he said, look, what I'd like you to do, I know you're an economist, I know you really know your economics, is give a little lecture about economics, about something that's in the news about economics, and just do it off the top of your head. Don't write anything down. At the most, write an equation or two on the blackboard or green board or whatever it was behind your behind where you're standing, but then give a little lecture about economics. So I said, okay, and he said, we'll do it right now. I said, okay, fine. I didn't need any time to prepare because I knew what I wanted to talk about. I knew the subject very well. I talked about supply side economics and what a fraud it was. I thought it was a fraud. I still think it's a fraud. But anyway, and I read that. The students laughed like madmen, like absolute madmen. And the scene was over, and the student actors had gathered in a semicircle, along with many of the cameramen, sound man, lighting men, craftspeople, everybody. And they applauded when I was done. They laughed and they applauded. And I thought, this is so great. I've taught them something about economics, and they're grateful to me. They're grateful to learn about economics. And my wonderful friend who starred in the movie, Mr. Broderick, came up to me. I never knew him before. He came up to me and said, you're great. Have you done much Broadway? And I said, I've never done any Broadway. This is the first acting I've ever done, except for a very small part in a movie. Whose name I've forgotten, but it was, anyway, it was a very, very great movie. But it was a sequel to Fast Times at Ridgemont High, but I forget what it was called. But anyway, I know it's called The Wildlife. And so Mr. Broderick said, well, you may not be a star now, but you will be when this comes out. And I smiled and thanked him. And I went over to John Hughes and I thanked him and thanked him. He said, no, I have to thank you. That was incredibly brilliant. And I said, because you learned about supply side economics, now it doesn't work, right? He said, no, because you were like a parody of an economics teacher or any high school teacher. I didn't think I was. I thought it was really interesting. I still think it's really interesting. And so there we went to, I went home. I got in my fancy car. I remember I had a very fancy car at the time. And I picked up my cell phone. I called my wife and I said, I just had the best day of my whole life. I felt wonderful getting that applause. Applause is great. Laughter is great. And I said, this has just been the best day of my life. And my wife, I knew she was going to say this. My wife said, better than the day we got married. And I said, well, no, of course not as good as the day we got married. But other than that, the best day of my life. And I was very, very happy. It was a great day.
Did you know did you have a feeling that was going to be something special?
I thought they would probably cut it out. I didn't think it would even get to the final edit of the movie. I remember when they showed me the rough cut several months after that, I was stunned that my scenes were in it. And they were in it fairly long, at a fairly good length. And I was just amazed, and I'm very, very happy about it. And I worked very consistently in Hollywood as an actor after that, very consistently for about 20 some years, and amazingly long time for an actor with no training and no help and no ability. And then eventually I got my own show, and I got another of my own shows, and I was a recurring character on several shows, several very good shows. And so that was the beginning of a wonderful change in my life, from being an economist and a writer, which is not a bad job, great jobs, to being a very, very small scale movie star, very, very small scale movie star.
Which I think for the people that are at home and are experiencing crisis right now during the pandemic, who don't know, who can't see the way out, you never know how one moment, how one day can change your life, can change the trajectory of your life.
But let me tell you something else, my friend. You have to be where the action is. My wonderful friend, a really, really great writer named Joan Didion, very, very great writer, and I think one of the people on this panel is an even bigger fan of hers than I am, much bigger fan of hers than I am, has a line in her book, Play It As It Lays, in which one of the characters says, you can't win if you're not at the table. And had I been a funny guy making up a funny lecture for an amateur theatrical in Cedar Rapids, nothing would have come of it. But because I was in Hollywood, the original in a giant mimeograph or Xerox machine that displays mass culture all over the world, everybody saw it. And it was, it's still people are saying it. And it made me a star. I got paid roughly $360, not $360,000, $360. I got residuals, which might have brought the total I got paid up to $500 or $600, but nothing, just a joke. But I became famous as a teacher. And I believe, based on that scene, I am by some considerable margin the most famous economist in the world. I'm by no means the best economist in the world, by no means the most learned economist, not even close, but I believe I am the most well-known economist in the world because of that day.
Okay, Ben Boychuk, I know you had a question.
Oh, well, I've got a lot of questions,
Yeah.
but you had mentioned at the outset getting to meet John Hughes. First of all, I want to know how you were introduced, and then was there a dance that you had to do, because it's very odd. It's a very sensitive thing to be Republican or conservative in Hollywood. Even to this day, it may even be even more difficult now. But was there a secret handshake? Was there sort of code phrases that you had to exchange before you became comfortable with the idea that, hey, this we're sort of intellectually or ideologically simpatico? How did that kind of go?
Well, it was really very, very easy because my very good friend, Michael Chinich, who really made all this happen. And by the way, there's a really interesting backstory about him. He was a high official at Universal at one time, very high official. And he had a big office on the top floor, and his office was all the big producers and directors used to come by his office. He was a big, big name. And one of the times I was visiting Michael Chinich, John Hughes came in, and he said he had been reading my columns for years in the American Spectator, and before that in the Wall Street Journal. And so he knew who I was. He was a fellow conservative, and that we had to stick together. And so we became friends. I think I have the amazing feeling that this might have been at the very dawn of the internet age, and I think we were communicating by internet, but we were communicating, and we knew each other. We didn't know each other well, but we knew each other. And also, I used to eat very, very frequently at a powerful restaurant called Morton's, not the Morton Steakhouse, but another one called Morton's on Melrose. And he used to go to that, and I used to see him and visit with him just to say hello occasionally.
That's actually one of Lewis's favorite pieces that you ever wrote, was that column.
Well, Monday Night at Morton's? Yeah, Morton's was the best place there's ever been. If you've ever seen, and I'm sure everybody who's watching this has seen Casablanca and has seen Rick's Cafe Americain, and everybody important in Casablanca comes to Rick's. That's sort of how it was with Morton's on Melrose. Everybody important came to Morton's. There's never been another restaurant anywhere with that kind of power. It was just phenomenal. I mean, there on Monday nights, which was the prestige night at Morton's, routinely, at that point there were 5 major studios. Routinely, the heads of all 5 studios would be there. Routinely, all 3 network heads would be there, and routinely, whoever was the biggest director of the era would be there. It was a super powerful group, and at the bar, stunningly beautiful young women would be lined up 3 deep, getting drinks, and I guess hoping to be discovered or something. I don't know what, but it was a very wonderful, exciting place to be. And my wife and I went there a great deal.
Lewis has a few questions and comments from the people on YouTube that they'd like to ask him now.
Yes. Given the hour and the fact that this is live, people should be aware that Mr. Stein, those are pajamas, correct?
No, they are not pajamas. They're not at all. This is a jacket, and this is a necktie from Yale Law School, and this is a shirt from Brooks Brothers.
So everything you're wearing belongs to an institution that's bankrupt.
No, I don't think Yale is anywhere near bankrupt. And
intellectually, Brooks Brothers financially.
Yale, some parts of Yale are intellectually bankrupt, but I'm pretty sure that this blazer comes from a custom tailor in
Reiner's,
that is,
which thank God is not bankrupt.
I don't think it's bankrupt.
And Lewis, get to the comments and questions, though, please.
So I want to ask you a question. Why, first of all, your scene in Ferris Bueller's is meta because you improvised it, and it's meta because it's anti, if people have read your work, and especially your father's work, because he gave supply side economics its name, not in a complimentary way.
Not at all.
Right. So you're offering a commentary on economics, specifically supply side. But here's my question. Why was John Hughes a better, and I mean this seriously, why was John Hughes a better economist than any economist? Because his films, from The Breakfast Club, Ferris Bueller's, the whole body of work is an excellent cross-section of different class members, especially in The Breakfast Club. But he does it sometimes explicitly, sometimes implicitly, whether it's Pretty in Pink or The Breakfast Club or Ferris Bueller, but he does it in a way that's so much more profound and eloquent than an equation or an economist speaking, with all due respect, even you.
Well, that would make him a very talented sociologist, not an economist. He was a brilliant sociologist, and in fact, Judah and I have very often discussed how Planes, Trains, and Automobiles is one of the great sociological works about America and the class system, and how it is similar to The Death of a Salesman, a really, really incredibly powerful and important play, but even better because it covers a much broader spectrum of America, but it just tears America to pieces in terms of how awful and horrible people are, but then it sort of puts it all back together and says it's fine. And the duo of Steve Martin and John Candy traveling around Americans, they reveal a really, really, really sad, depressing vision of America. But then at the end, it kind of comes together as something quite encouraging and uplifting about America. So
I want to save that thought for later, though, because
not economist.
I want to save that thought for later because that actually has to do with your favorite John Hughes movie and the deepest of John Hughes movies. Louis, what do you? I know people are writing in the comments. What are some of the comments people are asking him?
Is Mr. Stein a Biden supporter?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I'm having some technical difficulties, but I think that's one of the questions.
He's actually
Biden. Although I will say, unlike most of the people that you have met, I've spent a great deal of time in Mr. Biden's adopted state of Delaware, and it's a very nice state. And I actually have an amazing memory from when I was a small child of driving down a highway in Delaware.
You don't want to go there. No more driving. Delaware, Biden. It's not it doesn't end well.
Yes, it does. There's a field to my left. They were having a Ku Klux Klan meeting complete with a burning cross.
I warned you.
This would have been in the early 50s.
That is absolutely amazing.
Well, I've been in.
Let's get back to it. Remzo. Remzo,
go
what
ahead.
are your favorite movies?
Oh, I mean, one of the earliest memories I had was of Home Alone. Looking at Kevin McAllister, I don't think there was a single kid in the 90s that, watched that movie and didn't think, if I was left alone on my own, could I defend the household if somebody tried coming in? And, there's just something about everything that Hughes did. Mr. Stein, you brought up Arthur Miller earlier, Death of a Salesman. That's really one of my favorite books, one of my favorite plays, because that really made the everyman a hero in a sense. And, when you do that, when you look at that, you see a whole slate of films where just everyday people were made into figures that, dealt with everyday challenges in sometimes more comedic, more remarkable ways. But, ultimately they put the audience in the seat, giving them the ability to be on this adventure with them. And, personally, I'll never forget, I had many odd jobs after college. One of them was a security guard outside of DC. It was, I did it for a couple of months, but I'll never forget. I walked into the security office and I saw one of my colleagues. He was an immigrant from Senegal, and on his iPhone, he was watching your scene from Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
That's very funny.
And I stood behind his shoulder and I'm watching his iPhone. I'm like, oh, I remember watching that. And when you start saying, Bueller, he just, he just lost it. He just started going absolutely crazy.
You're very kind to bring that up.
Yeah, I mean, it was a job where, often there wasn't much fun in it. We did it because we needed the work and we did it well as professionals. But moments like that, I do have a question. When you look back at when you first started acting and many years later, I mean, I'm only 25. I'm still watching your films and everything. What's it like to look back and see how many generations everything has touched?
But I'm very happy to touch all these generations. I hope I live long enough to see it hit more generations, touch more generations. But I'm amazed at what's happened. I'm amazed at what it is to be an actor. And now you run into people who've seen you. I remember at I think it was a 2000 Republican convention in New York. I think it was in New York. I might be mistaken about that. I was at one of the parties, and every kind of person you can imagine, from janitors to busboys to servers to gardeners to billionaires, or maybe in those days there weren't billionaires, but multimillionaires' wives, would come up to me and quote from various movies I was in, and I thought, I'm really hitting everybody. And I remember that same night, a friend of mine named Baron Thomas and I went down to a restaurant in Greenwich Village called Chumley's, which is no longer there. And just crossing the street near Sheridan Square, so many people called out to me, Bueller, and I thought, wow, this is just an amazing way to live. In a way, everybody is your friend and neighbor if you're a well-known actor, even even a modestly well-known actor like me, and it's just wonderful.
And just so you know, the difference between Ben and most people is when you meet most actors, all you know after meeting them is about them. After meeting Ben knows everything about you.
Oh, you're very kind. You're very kind.
And that's the gospel. But getting back to it, how did John Hughes? In all of his movies, whether from Pretty in Pink to 16 Candles to The Breakfast Club to Ferris Bueller to Planes, Trains, he catered to Home Alone. How did one man how was one person so in touch with everybody in society?
He was terribly smart. He was a very, very good observer. As I think I was commenting a moment ago, he was actually not just a writer and a comedian and a director, but a sociologist, and he took a real interest in people. I mean, there's a scene in Planes, Trains, and Automobiles where John Candy and Steve Martin are on a bus, and Steve Martin is trying to sing a song that the whole bus will be able to sing along with, and he sings Three Coins and a Fountain, and nobody on the bus knows it. It's a great song. It's a wonderful song. Nobody on the bus knows it. But then John Candy starts singing a song. What was it, the theme from the Flintstones, something like that?
Yes, it was the Flintstones, and then John Candy at the end says, "Wilma,"
and everybody on the bus knew it. And I thought to myself, how did John Hughes know that they would all know that? And yet he did not. You cannot give enough credit to the fact that this was just an extremely intelligent guy who was a very, very keen observer. I mean, that's a very huge part of it. It didn't happen by accident. He's just a very, very smart, capable guy who put his incredible intelligence to work.
On a side note, one of the people asked about something you had brought up. How did you get the Wonder Years?
After Ferris, I became sort of the go-to guy to be a teacher, especially to be a teacher with a boring voice. And so they asked me to be on the Wonder Years, and I had always loved that show. And I was very happy to oblige. I was paid hardly anything for doing it, but I loved doing it. And I don't remember how many episodes I did, maybe 10 or 15, but not that many. And I just loved it. And I especially remember one episode where Fred Savage is tempted to break up with Winnie and start going after an incredibly beautiful new girl at the school, whose name I do not remember. But she was, I think, the most beautiful woman I've ever seen in my life. And I remember looking at her and saying, thank you, God, for creating someone this beautiful.
Ben Boychuk.
I want to change gears ever so slightly, but in the same vein. You came to Hollywood to be a screenwriter, essentially, right?
Well, to do lots of things. I had contracts to do 2 books. One, a novel about Hollywood, about Los Angeles rather, and one a nonfiction book about the political leanings of the people who make TV, the producers and writers who make TV, and whether those coincide with the political views expressed not directly but indirectly in the TV shows.
So then how did you fall into screenwriting? And then I have a follow-up from that.
I fell into screenwriting because a very, very wonderful man named Bill Sapphire, who was a great, great writer and had been a speechwriter for President Nixon, and before that had been a super successful public relations man, used to have a party for breaking the fast at Yom Kippur in Washington, D.C. And he was a friend of my mother and father, and they would occasionally bring me along to this dinner. And at one of the dinners, I met a man named Eddie Blyer, who was a high official of Warner Brothers TV. And he had been Bill Sapphire's roommate, I think at Syracuse, some university in upstate New York. And he and I fell into conversation. I suggested a movie to him, which would be a sequel to a really, really great movie called Rebel Without a Cause. And he said, that's a great idea. He said, sometimes the most obvious movies and ideas for movies are the ones we overlook. And he said, I'll buy that. Well, let's buy that storyline. You write it, just write 5 or 10 pages of an outline, and I'll have you work with a fellow named Steve Green, a very, very nice, smart young man. And he and I worked together. And Steve Green quit Warner Brothers after a short while and moved to Hollywood. And I stayed in touch with him. And his best friend or close friend was Michael Chinich. And Michael Chinich said, "You're a very, very good writer. And why don't you try writing some screenplays and we'll see if we can get anything going." And meanwhile, your friend, Louis, Joan Didion, had read some of the things I had written. I'd written a novel, and Joan Didion thought I could write screenplays. And she put me in touch with a super powerful agency called Ziegler Discant. And they started selling things. They were really, really good at selling scripts, really, really, really good at selling scripts. The importance of having a good agent cannot be overstated.
Remzo,
Sorry?
I wanted to say something, Mr. Stein, to Remzo. Remzo, this is called Jewish geography.
Thank you for enlightening me.
That's the answer.
Okay. Minuteman actually has a question for you on YouTube. Were either of the books ever about LA written? I know the answer. One of them for sure was written.
Yeah, the book. Yes, the one studying the social, political and social views of the people who make TV was published and was called The View from Sunset Boulevard. It still exists. I think it might still be in print, but probably not. And the one with the 3-generational saga about Los Angeles, I wrote the beginning of it. This is a kind of funny story. And then the editor who was editing it for a very, 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 very big publishing company did not like it. And this is a very unusual story and gives me a certain insight into the world that I never would have had without this insight. He said, "I will come to your hotel room in New York and I will help you edit it." And he proposed to me that he spend the night having sex with me in my hotel room. And I said, "That's just completely out of the question. I'm not so interested in being gay. And it's out of the question." And he left. And it's something of a huff, and killed my book project the very next day.
Great.
I can't help myself. A few things. Joan Didion and I were an item. We were never. It was platonic. We stay in touch. As a heterosexual, let me just say, one does not decide to be gay. Tonight I'll be gay. But I knew that's where it was going, Professor.
Okay. Well,
at the hotel room.
I don't know what comment to make about that. I don't think I said anything.
No, you didn't. You said you didn't have an interest in being gay. It's not like the flu. You're gay. Well, you're not.
He was trying to be nice.
I don't know what kind of comment to make in reply to that, but God bless you.
He was trying to be nice. So Tammy Gabriel actually has a question about do you think there's anyone comparable to John Hughes in current Hollywood?
Absolutely not. Not even remotely. I mean, I don't follow current Hollywood anywhere near closely enough to make a detailed comparison, but I never see anything displaying anything remotely like the talent I see in John Hughes, especially in his very best works, which are genuine classics. I mean, like Planes, Trains, and Automobiles and Ferris Bueller's Day Off, which are, I think, genuine classics. I mean, I think they will be discussed and thought about and analyzed for a very, very long time.
Do you think that Hughes's scripts were well served by other directors? I mean, some of them were, some of them. I mean, do you think in general though his writing was well served? That maybe the piece. I mean, the work that he directed and wrote are clearly immortal. But some of the other stuff, what do you think about some of the other works that he wrote but that he didn't direct?
To be honest with you, I don't know enough about it to comment intelligently, so I won't.
Okay, fair enough.
And I was just going to say, I have a hard copy of The View from Sunset Boulevard. My question for you, and Hollywood Days, Hollywood Nights, which you autographed for me kindly.
God bless you, sir. God bless you, sir.
It was a very Mark David Chapman moment. But here's my question. The SL you have that your photo on the back of the...
I think that's an SLC. It's an SLC.
Okay, because I wanted to know if it was a 380, a 450.
It was a 450 SLC.
Gotcha. It was red, right?
But it was a great car, but it broke a lot. And I loved it, but it broke a lot. And I got it for a very funny reason, if I may say so. I wanted a really nice car, and I was renting a Plymouth or a Dodge or something like that when I first came out. And I had a date with a girl whom I knew through some friends who was a genuine Rockefeller. I mean, she was like John D's great-granddaughter or something like that. And when I picked her up for our first date, she said, I'm really surprised that you have this kind of car. I would have thought you'd have a much nicer car. And so the very next day, I went to the Mercedes of Beverly Hills and the dealer, and I told them what I wanted. And they said, well, that's going to be too expensive, but we have a nice used one. And they showed it to me, and I said, well, that's still awfully expensive. And the salesman, a wizard salesman, said, what's the matter, Ben? Don't you believe in your own future? And that is one of the best lines for a salesman I have ever heard.
That's good.
And she, and for the record, it was illegal for a Rockefeller to go on a date with our people.
No, but not at all. Not at all. Not at all. Not at all. She and I had a lot of good times. So that really was 100% platonic relationship. And she was a very nice girl, but I never heard her say the slightest anti-Semitic.
It's Lewis's projection by getting rejected by a Rockefeller. But I want to get to something though important. You stayed in contact with John Hughes. He had this prolific career in the 80s. Home Alone comes out, and he sort of leaves Hollywood in a sense. But you stayed in touch, and you were actually at his funeral. And
yes, it was very, very sad and very touching, and I was extremely grateful to have been invited. As far as I'm aware, Mr. Broderick and I were the only actors from his movies who were at the funeral, and that was, to me, quite surprising, in as much as there were many actors who had much more extensive careers with John Hughes than I did. But they were his wife and his children were pleased to invite me, and I was grateful to come.
Remzo, I know you have a few more questions.
Yeah, I mean, it's been kind of gnawing at me a little bit. Growing up as a millennial, a lot of the films that my generation has kind of grown up with were, the cult classics that came out of the 80s. But what has always kind of gotten mixed reviews from every generation of audiences were films that have been remade, whether it was Red Dawn or, one of my favorite films by Michael Lehman was Heathers. I'm a big dark comedy fan, and they remade Heathers, and it just lost that flair. In an era where movies are constantly being repackaged and rebooted and remade, if there's one John Hughes film you could just protect from ever having to be touched by another director, what would one of them be?
Great question.
That is a great question. I think Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, because although Ferris is by far my favorite movie, and I love it, and it lifts my heart every time I see it, I think Planes, Trains, and Automobiles is the most powerful commentary on the class system and on culture and on differences between and among classes, and what it's like to be an American in whatever year that it came out. Judy, you would know, what year did it come out?
I believe 1988 or
1987, I think. 87.
He really nailed it about what it was like to be an American at that time, and it was awesome how well he nailed it. And by the way, as I've told Judah many times, it's a wonderful movie and brilliant, but it is, to me, so sad. I mean, Death of a Salesman is incredibly sad too, but Planes, Trains, and Automobiles is so sad, it's really almost unbearable.
And of course, it's being remade with Will Smith and Kevin Hart.
No,
I did not know that.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Oh my God! Oh,
yeah.
I mean, we should start the boycott now.
I did not know that.
I don't know.
Well, I hope well, as a person of color, I don't find what you're so offended about.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it. That's always been my thing.
They've just run out of ideas.
It's happening, baby. It's happening.
There are no John Hughes. But what I'm fascinated is, Remzo is easily the youngest person in this group. How did you find John Hughes, Remzo? Like, how did you? Because it could have been The Mask. I mean, you might have found Ben through The Mask, which wasn't John Hughes. But
well, actually, I found Ben through the Fairly Odd Parents growing up.
Funny.
that was it for me. But I mean, my first real introduction to John Hughes was I was in elementary school, and there was just one day where I was throwing a fit. I told my father, it's like, I don't want to go to school. You have the day off from work. Can we please do anything else? He's like, fine, you're going to throw a fit one time. I'll let you stay home, but we've got to watch what I want to watch on TV. And the first thing he did was he pulled out a VHS copy of Ferris Bueller's Day Off. And, you know, he put it in. I'm like, Dad, it's not a cartoon. It's nothing I'd want to watch. We sat down and watched that movie together. And I mean, what I always loved about Hughes's films was that it was one of those things that I could bond with my family over. That's something we could all equally laugh at. And there were jokes meant for younger people, and there were jokes meant for the adults. And no matter when I watched that movie or any of his films, you know, especially Family Vacation, the others and stuff, they're always something new I'm picking up about them. And I think, you know, maybe one day if I have children, that'll be something that I get to share with them as well. And it's that beauty in that, you know, just giving out good, authentic performances with good comedy that's going to last forever. I mean, there are many films that I like now that have come out. You know, I think one of the big films that my friends and I really loved in high school was the Hangover series. I think the first Hangover film is an objectively good movie. I don't, however, know if that and maybe other films that, you know, people around my age like now will still have that lasting power 10, 20 years from now in a way like many of John Hughes' films have.
Oh, sorry, go.
No, that's all.
No, but one of the things that's interesting that somebody, Jim Couples wrote about remaking Planes, Trains. The hardest reason to remake Planes, Trains for any reason was because they had no form of communication. That's what made the movie so really special, was they didn't have a cell phone. It wasn't like he could call up his wife and go, honey, I'm over here, or call up. It was the absolute lack of communication, being in Wichita, Kansas at 2 a.m, looking for that hotel room or that motel, and the guy going, you know, that scene where why is it taking so long? And he asked them, he said, I'm just trying to show him around town. And at 2 a.m, and John Candy says, I'm paraphrasing, says to Steve, it's rare a man's proud of his town these days. And it was just such a special scene. But Remzo brought up a great point, because there's like, I could recall, Ben, and you're a huge music fan, and you listen to music on the way down to the desert. And when Dream On came on the other day, I said, I remember vividly where I was when I saw that. And that's how I feel about John Hughes. I vividly remember the first time I saw Ferris. I vividly remember the first time I saw The Breakfast Club. And I vividly remember the effect it had on me.
Well, I remember the first time I saw Ferris Bueller too. It was in a screening room at Paramount. And I had called Michael Eisner and asked him if I could use a screening room to see it. And he said yes. And I looked at it and I thought, this movie is not going to be a success. There's just no way this movie is going to be a success. And it's chaotic. It goes off in all directions. It doesn't really tell a single story. It tells many different stories. It's like chaos. And I mean, it'll disappear a quick death, but it was fun while it lasted. So I remember that very, very well. And as I say, I was stunned when it became a gigantic, super mega hit. And Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, I don't remember where I was when I first saw that, but I do remember thinking, Christ, this is sad. Wow, this is sad.
Can I ask you a question? How did John Hughes, because you're in Hollywood and you know it's hard to have fortitude when you go against the grain. How did he have the fortitude to make the projects that he wanted and to go against the total grain of all youthful comedies, of all? How did he do it?
Well, he's a genius, and people recognize that his movies were funny and brilliant and well structured. And I mean, I didn't see
Not
his
critics, not critics.
No. I'm saying he was recognized, I think, by everybody as being a genius and a person who, despite whichever your initial reaction might have been to his movies, was going to have a great movie when the day was done.
Yeah, I thought. Oh,
Go
Go
ahead.
ahead. Go ahead.
I beg your
I was
pardon.
going to say he. I thought it started first with a typewriter and then Word Perfect, and then Word. Some people think Word Perfect's better.
It really started with Vacation, right? I mean, it started with a story in National Lampoon that Vacation 58, which, I mean, he was a writer first and foremost who became a brilliant filmmaker, and but something that I think that Judah has said, and I don't know what you would say about this. He was sort of the last patriot filmmaker. Does that resonate with you?
I don't know that he was the last, but he certainly was one, and he was a patriot filmmaker in a very interesting way, which was that he just said basically, life in America is great. I don't care what you think, what you rich commies in Hollywood think. It's great. It's effing great, and I appreciate it, and the people in my movies appreciate it. And if you don't appreciate it, you're missing something basic, and I feel sorry for you.
Remzo, let me ask you a question. Was it popular, since you're in a different you're in a different ethnic,
say it because I'm 10 years old. Go ahead.
In your younger, were your friends, were you guys talking about these movies? Was it, I mean, or was it just you saw it with your family, or were you walking around school saying to people, you gotta watch Ferris? You gotta watch
it feels like a million years ago to a large degree, but it never felt like it was that far out of reach. And maybe it was because I was born in the early 90s, but for us, these were just the films that were just part of every holiday. You know, we watched Christmas Vacation around the holidays. We watched Home Alone around the holidays. It was just part of that culture, you know, growing up. And I think that's something that a lot of people are missing now, especially, you know, as I look at, you know, my friends' younger siblings who let's say might still be in high school or entering college. A lot of those, you know, regular pop culture traditions seem to be disappearing, but they're not disappearing because of, you know, necessarily they don't really get the humor or something. They're disappearing because I think there's an attack from within our own subculture amongst the youth of trying to reject anything that came before a certain woke period. And I don't want to get political on this, but, you know, it seems like you can't laugh at things anymore. You can't laugh at, you know, Chevy Chase jumping in the pool with the gorgeous woman while his wife is upstairs. You can't have that type of humor in some way. And that's odd because when you look at a lot of the films right now with a lot of, you know, flash in the pan type of humor, a lot of vulgarity and stuff like that. Yeah, there are some of those funny moments, but there seems to be that schism starting to rise to a certain degree. And you know, for me, it's quite sad.
No one's laughed at Chevy Chase for 40 years. Just so you know.
But Remzo actually brings up a great point, because that famous scene from Planes, Trains, and Automobiles would be, I don't know if they could do those Aren't Pillows anymore. I just, I don't know if that would be, which is one of the most classic, you know, it's funny about Planes, Trains, and Ben and I have discussed this over and over again. You could watch that movie 15 times and you miss and still miss jokes that were told in that movie.
Oh, 100%.
You know, from him sitting at the airport reading, like, I believe the book was The Mounted Horseman, you know, or you know, reading John Candy reading some erotic book at the airport, to just, I mean, just the scene of them getting pulled over and Michael McKean pulling them over and asking and saying there are no gauges that work on this car, but oddly enough, the radio does. And just, it was those little things that John Hughes that he touched on in from 16 Candles, Ben, to these, that he felt the youth. I don't. It's lost. And your friend Michael Chinich, who cast so much of this stuff, actually casted teens. He casted people of age.
Yeah. Yeah, Michael was a genius. He still is a genius, and a lot of the success of John Hughes movies is credited to Michael. But unfortunately, Michael and John had a bit of a falling out at some point, and Michael stopped casting for him. And I think John's movies might have been better had they not had that falling out, but they did. And I don't know. Great movies. There's a saying in Hollywood. I'm sure you've all heard it many times, which is that great movies are not directed or produced; they are cast. And so he was very. All these movies were very well cast. I mean, he was extremely good at everything. There's just nothing he wasn't good at. That's the thing. There was nothing he wasn't good at. Although Judah and I have quite a considerable disagreement about Planes, Trains, which is I consider, except at the very end, an incredibly sad, bitterly sad movie. And I don't think Judah does, but these are great. He was a great director, a great genius.
It's not that I don't think it's
to have him in this country.
I do think it's an incredibly sad movie, but at the same time, I also believe there's a lot of hope in the movie.
Yes, at the very end. At the very end, but it's really sad. It's funny, Judah. I'm very, very easily moved, and I just talking about it is making me feel like crying right now. I find it really, really sad.
Ben Boychuk, final words on this John Hughes thing. What did he mean to you?
I'm so glad that we've been able to talk so much about planes, trains, and automobiles, because as much as I love Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and as much as I love it, and really that was my introduction to you, Ben Stein, was through that film. And as much as I love it, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles is my favorite John Hughes film of all time, and that's the one that really holds up. And I want to watch it again after we're done here. But I also want to say thank you to everybody who is tuning in on the YouTube live channel. This is a new thing that we hope to keep doing a lot. The World According to Ben Stein. If you're watching this, thank you. You're at the vanguard. We hope you'll subscribe if you haven't subscribed already. And for anybody who is going to be seeing this later, almost certainly through links on Parler, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. There's so much more to come, and we're very excited about all this. And thank you, Ben, for taking the time.
Thank you very much. Certainly enjoyed it very much. Thank you. And thank you very much, Judah. Thank you, everybody. Louis, everybody.
And Remza, your final thoughts on John Hughes?
What's amazing is that his films are going to leave a lasting legacy that I hope touch on many generations. And I think there are very few, things out there that are able to unite people in an age of division, especially when we look at generational differences. But, when it comes to his films, it's something I will be able to share with my parents. It's something I'll be able to share with my younger brother. It's something that I can share with everyone. I think when we look at the things that make us laugh, it brings us all closer together. So, even though he's no longer walking with us, and I do believe he's in a better place with our Lord, his films are going to be touching people for decades and decades to come. And I hope they continue to enjoy it as much as we all have.
God bless you.
Louis, final words. Louis, final words.
I haven't seen any of his movies, but I want to thank Ben for joining us. And here's a question for you, and I want my closing question. You've taught at the university level, you've taught in graduate schools, you've taught on film, you've taught primary school, secondary school.
I haven't taught primary.
You taught Richie Rich. You were Richie Rich's private tutor. All right. Who were the better students, the ones on film or in real life? Pepperdine, UC Santa Cruz, or Hollywood?
The best students by far were actually at American University in Washington, D.C., which where I had some of the best times of my life. UC Santa Cruz and Pepperdine about the same.
Louis, that actually was a pretty good question. And Ben, I want to do the next episode, if you feel comfortable. I want to talk about what it's like having been blacklisted in Hollywood, and the blacklist does exist, and what it feels like to write something which you have, and directors force your name off the project. And I don't think
that doesn't feel good.
And I want to talk a little bit more about that people don't realize it because it's glossed over a little bit. But to be outspoken as you have, to be heroic as you have, and to express your views, sometimes for fun and for free, and the guts that it takes, and that the blacklist does exist. If you'd feel comfortable with talking about that.
It's keenly real.
And I want to thank everybody for listening to the first episode of World According to Ben Stein. You can find this on YouTube. Like Ben Boychuk said, subscribe, follow us. I want to thank Remzo. You were incredible. Louis Fine, of course. Ben Boychuk, managing editor, AM Greatness, and just an all-around great guy. And Ben, what are your final words on John Hughes?
We miss him very, very much.
Thank you very much, sir. I want to wish everybody a great week. And Ben, if you could give that famous Ben Stein salute. We will talk to you soon. Thank you, everybody, for listening.
Thank you very much.